She held my hand at the graveside like she used to when she was little. My daughter. The one I coached through her first bike ride in the driveway. The one I drove 3 hours to see graduate. Standing there in the November cold with her head on my shoulder while we buried her mother. I thought at least I still have her. That thought would cost me everything. Almost. My wife Lorraine passed on a Tuesday. 41 years we had together. 41 years of the same kitchen, the same coffee pot, the same creak on the third step of the staircase that I never got around to fixing. When she was gone, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum full of things that used to mean something. My daughter Vanessa came down from Portland for the funeral with her husband, a man named Troy. Troy sold commercial real estate. He had a firm handshake and the kind of smile that worked too hard. I'd never entirely warmed to him, but Vanessa loved him, so I kept my thoughts where they belonged, to myself. After the service, after the casseroles stopped arriving and the neighbours went back to their own lives, it was just me. 67 years old, retired from 30 years in the water utility department, a paid-off house in Boise, a decent pension, and a silence so heavy some mornings I didn't bother getting dressed until noon. Vanessa called every few days at first. Then she started calling every day, which was nice. Then she and Troy started talking about how I shouldn't be alone. Dad, what if you fell? What if something happened and no one found you for days? I told her I was fine. I still drove. I still cooked. I walked 2 miles every morning down the canal path the same way I had for 15 years. But she kept at it. Troy kept at it. And I'll be honest with you, grief does something to your judgment. It makes you want to say yes to things just to feel less alone. By February, 3 months after the funeral, they had moved in. I told myself it made sense. The house had 4 bedrooms. Vanessa worked remotely. Troy said he could manage his listings from anywhere. They'd help with bills, help with yard work, be company at dinner. It seemed reasonable, more than reasonable. It seemed like a blessing. The first few months were genuinely good. Vanessa would make Sunday dinners. Troy would handle the yard. We'd watch football on Saturday afternoons, me in my old recliner, him on the couch with a beer, and it almost felt like family again. Not the family I'd had with Lorraine. Nothing would ever be that, but something warm, something that pushed back the quiet. I should have noticed the changes earlier. I see that now. It started small. Troy mentioned once that I was paying too much for homeowners insurance. He had a contact, a college buddy, who could get me a better rate. Would I mind if he took a look at the paperwork? I said sure. He sat at my desk for an hour, made some calls, and my premium dropped by $40 a month. I was grateful. Then he asked about my investment accounts, just to take a look, just to make sure things were optimized. I'd had the same financial advisor for 12 years, a steady man named Bill, but Troy said Bill was too conservative, that I was leaving money on the table. I said I'd think about it. He kept bringing it up. Then one afternoon I came home from my walk and found them both at the kitchen table with a man I didn't know. Troy introduced him as a colleague. There were documents spread across the table. I asked what was going on. "We're just getting some things organized, Dad," Vanessa said. "Estate planning stuff, for your protection." The man across from her was a notary. I didn't know that then. I found out later. I looked at the papers. Words like power of attorney and joint tenancy jumped out at me. Troy explained it like he was doing me a favor, that given my age, given that I was living alone before, it made sense to have certain protections in place. Vanessa nodded along with everything he said. I didn't sign anything that day. Something in my gut wouldn't let me. I said I wanted to look things over, and the man packed up and left. Troy was quiet through dinner. Vanessa said I was being paranoid, that they were just trying to help. That night I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Here's what you need to understand about me. I'm not a suspicious person by nature. I spent 30 years fixing infrastructure that most people never think about. I showed up, I did my job, I came home. I trusted the people I was supposed to trust. I wasn't naive, but I wasn't the type to assume the worst of my own family. But something had shifted in that kitchen, and I couldn't shake it. A week later, I found the notebook. Vanessa had left her cardigan on the coat rack by the back door, and when I picked it up to hang it properly, a small spiral notebook fell out of the pocket. I almost put it back without looking. Almost. It was her handwriting, lists mostly, property value estimates of my house, my street address at the top of one page with a number circled underneath, $387,000. Below that, notes about assisted living options in a city 2 hours away. Prices per month. A note that said Dad won't fight it if we frame it right. I read that line 3 times. Dad won't fight it if we frame it right. I set the notebook down on the kitchen counter. I stood very still. Outside I could hear the neighbor's dog barking at something, and a car passing on the street, and everything perfectly ordinary about the world going on exactly as it always had. My daughter thought her father was a soft target, a grieving old man who could be guided, nudged, placed somewhere convenient while the house was sold, and the proceeds absorbed into a life I wasn't part of. I put the notebook back in the pocket of the cardigan. I hung it on the rack exactly as I'd found it. Then I called my attorney. His name is Paul, and I'd known him since Vanessa was in middle school. He handled our wills when Lorraine and I were in our 40s, and I'd updated mine the year before she passed. He answered on the second ring. I told him I needed to come in as soon as possible, that I couldn't explain over the phone. I went the next morning while Vanessa and Troy were still asleep. Paul's office opened at 8, and I was in his parking lot at 7:45, sitting in my truck with the heater running, going over everything in my head. He listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Howard, you've been smart to come in now. A lot of people wait until the damage is already done." I said I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with. He explained that if Troy had gotten me to sign a joint tenancy agreement, Vanessa would have had a co-ownership interest in the house, meaning she couldn't easily be removed, and the property could be legally complicated to deal with at my death. If he'd also gotten power of attorney, they could have made financial and medical decisions on my behalf. Not immediately, not obviously, but the door would have been open. I asked him what I should do. He said the first thing was to make sure the house was protected the right way, through a revocable living trust with me as sole trustee, with a successor trustee I genuinely trusted, not Vanessa, someone outside the situation. I had a younger brother, Martin, down in Nevada. We'd grown up close, drifted apart the way brothers do after careers and families take over, but he was a good man. Steady, no debt, no angle. I called him that night from my truck, parked outside a hardware store so Vanessa and Troy wouldn't overhear. Martin picked up on the third ring. "Howard, it's been a minute. Everything okay?" I said, "Not exactly." I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time on the other end of the line. "Tell me what you need," he said. That was Martin. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved carefully. Paul drafted the trust documents. I transferred the house into the trust with me as trustee. I updated my financial accounts so that Martin was listed as the only authorized secondary contact. I created a new savings account at a different bank that Vanessa and Troy didn't know existed. I moved 6 months of living expenses into it. I did all of this on weekday mornings while they were in their respective routines. Troy on his calls, Vanessa at her laptop. I drove to Paul's office, signed what needed to be signed, and came home in time for lunch. Smiled across the table, asked about their days. I'm not proud of the deception exactly, but I wasn't the one who had started it. The moment that changed everything. The moment I knew I couldn't keep pretending came on a Wednesday evening in late March. I was coming down the hallway toward the kitchen to refill my water glass, and I stopped when I heard their voices, low and close, the way you talk when you think you're alone. Troy was saying something about a timeline. Vanessa said they needed to wait until summer, that pushing too fast would make me suspicious. Troy said they couldn't afford to wait. He used the word overextended. He used the phrase only option on the table right now. Then Vanessa said, "He's not going to understand. We'll just have to move forward and deal with the fallout." I stood in that hallway for I don't know how long, long enough that my water glass felt heavy in my hand. My daughter, who held my hand at the funeral, who I had driven 3 hours to see graduate. She was talking about me like I was a logistical problem to be resolved. I went back to my room and I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, and I let myself feel it, all of it, for about 10 minutes. Then I picked up my phone and texted Paul, ready to move forward with the rest of it. He replied within the hour, "Come in tomorrow at 9, bring the account numbers." I didn't sleep much that night, but not because I was afraid. I was past afraid. I was something quieter and harder than afraid. I was decided. The following Saturday, I asked Vanessa and Troy to sit down with me after breakfast. I said I had something I wanted to go over with them. Troy got his coffee and settled in at the kitchen table, looking confident, like a man who expects to be agreed with. I put a folder on the table. Inside were two things: a letter from Paul's office confirming the house was now held in the Howard C. Briggs Revocable Living Trust, with my brother Martin as successor trustee, and a formal notice also from Paul that I was requesting they vacate the property within 60 days. Troy opened the folder. I watched his face go through several things in a short period of time. "What is this?" he said. "It's exactly what it says it is," I told him. Vanessa looked at the papers and then looked at me. "Dad." "I found the notebook," I said. She went very still. "Dad won't fight it if we frame it right. I left that sit in the air between us. I know what the plan was. I know about the assisted living facilities. I know about the conversations you've been having." The room was quiet for a long time. Troy started to say something about how I'd misunderstood, how they were just exploring options, how they were worried about me. I let him finish. Then I said, "I'm not angry. I'm not going to involve anyone else unless I have to. But you will leave this house in 60 days, and we will not be pretending this didn't happen." "You can't do this," Troy said. "We gave up our apartment. We relocated." "Based on an invitation you manipulated me into extending," I said, "while I was grieving my wife." He didn't have an answer for that. Vanessa cried. I expected that. I sat across from her and kept my hands on the table, and I didn't soften what I'd said, because softening it was what had gotten me into this in the first place. I told her that I loved her, that I had always loved her, that nothing about loving her made what she'd done acceptable. "I needed help," she said. "We're in debt, Dad. Real debt. We didn't know what else to do." "Then you should have told me that," I said. "I would have helped you. I would have helped you the way a father helps, not like this." She didn't say anything to that. They were out in 53 days. Troy barely looked at me on the way out. Vanessa hugged me at the door, briefly, and I hugged her back, because she is my daughter, and some things survive even this. I don't know what comes next for us. I'd be lying if I said I did. There are phone calls now, occasional, careful, with long silences between the words. "She's in therapy," she told me last month. I said that was good. I meant it. The house is mine again. Really mine. Not in the way it was when Lorraine was alive, not that particular warmth, but mine in the sense that I know what's in it and what it stands for and who I am in the rooms where I made my decisions. I walk the canal path every morning still. 2 miles, same as always. Sometimes I think about that sentence in the notebook. Dad won't fight it if we frame it right. They didn't know me as well as they thought they did. Here's what I'll tell you, if you'll let me, because I didn't understand any of this until it happened to me. Get your estate documents in order before you need them. Not after a health scare, not after someone you trusted sits across from a notary at your kitchen table. Now, a revocable living trust is not complicated. An estate attorney can have it done in a few weeks. Name someone you trust without reservation as your successor trustee, a sibling, a long-time friend, anyone whose financial interests are completely separate from yours. Keep your account information private, and if someone in your life starts asking questions about your assets with more urgency than the situation warrants, pay attention to that feeling. I didn't, not soon enough. But I got there. The creak on the third step is still there. I never did fix it. Some mornings I step over it on the way down, same as always. Some mornings I step right on it, just to hear it. It sounds like something that still belongs to me. I still think about that notebook sometimes. Such a small thing, a spiral notepad, the cheap kind you buy in a free pack at the drugstore. And in it, my daughter's handwriting, the same handwriting I used to see on birthday cards left on the kitchen counter, writing out a plan to take everything I had. What I've come to understand is that actions have weight, not in any mystical sense, not the way some people talk about karma or cosmic balance, but in the plain human sense that what we choose to do shapes what comes back to us. Troy and Vanessa made choices, small ones at first, a question here, a document there, and each choice made the next one easier, until they were sitting at my kitchen table with a notary I'd never met, talking about my life like it was a transaction to be closed. That's how it works. You compromise a little, then a little more, and somewhere along the way, you stop being the person you thought you were. I made choices too. I could have confronted them the night I found the notebook while I was still shaking. I could have thrown them out that same evening, changed the locks, let the whole thing turn into something ugly and public. Part of me wanted to, but I learned, slowly, the hard way, that acting out of raw emotion rarely gets you where you actually need to go. What got me through this wasn't anger. It was thinking clearly when everything in me wanted to stop thinking and just react. Paul's office at 7:45 in the morning. The phone call to Martin from a parking lot. 60 days notice in a manila folder, not a shouting match in the kitchen. That's the only reason I still have my home. There's something I want to say about standing your ground, because I don't think people talk about it honestly enough. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like driving across town at dawn to sit in an attorney's parking lot because you're not sure who you can trust inside your own house. It feels like smiling across the dinner table for 2 weeks while something cold and deliberate moves through you. It's exhausting, but it's also the only version of strength that actually holds up. Not the kind that flares and burns out, but the kind that stays quiet and keeps moving forward anyway. And the hardest part wasn't protecting the house. The hardest part was accepting that my daughter, who I had loved without condition for her entire life, had looked at that love and calculated how much it was worth. That takes something out of you. I won't pretend otherwise. But I also won't pretend that love means you let someone walk through you. Loving Vanessa didn't mean handing her the ability to erase me. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do for the people you love is to show them exactly where the line is. I'm not sure what we are to each other now. Something still. The phone calls continue. Carefully, but they continue. The creak on the third step is still there. I never did fix it. I used to think I should. Now I think I'll leave it exactly as it is.